Hey, Doug, thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah. Hi, Brian. I've been in sales for almost 15 years, and of course, over the last, since your star has really taken off in the last 4 or 5 years, your content has been really popular with me and my teams. I got my real start in software as a service at Salesforce in Chicago 10 years ago, and found my way back to the Twin Cities where I'm originally from and worked for SAP there, representing the Concur portfolio for a good 7 or 8 years. And now I'm a sales leader with Sprout Social based remotely in Minneapolis.
Cool. Well, why'd you
Yeah.
pick sales?
That's a really interesting question. I grew up as an athlete and like to keep score.
Yeah.
And I had a really formative moment when I was in college and I read Moneyball, which is a baseball book. Well, it's a business book manifesting as a baseball book. Uh, a story about untapped markets. I got into minor league baseball and I was working in minor league baseball and I was pulling tarp and writing press releases and realized that I was nobody's nephew in the baseball industry. And so I started selling group tickets. And I said, hey, this is a way that I can prove that I'm any good at my job.
Yeah.
So I got into sales that way, kind of accidentally, which I feel like for my generation is a pretty
Pretty normal.
yeah, yeah. I accidentally ended up in sales and it changed my life is something that we hear quite often. So
Yeah.
I matriculated to Salesforce and I've been on the road ever since.
Yeah. What do you like about it?
I think that it being in sales challenges us in ways that it's difficult to simulate outside of this profession, right? Um, I think that oftentimes you can get into roles or career paths where a lot of your job is explaining what the heck you do to your bosses. Whereas in sales, we can focus on what drives the business and um, the business that we're working for, our boss, whomever cares to know, can tell exactly what we're up to. And I think it oftentimes limits a lot of the politics that are in play in corporate life. Um, there's a high value on delivering value to the people that can pay money in exchange for something. And that requires us to kind of constantly be sharpening what we do, how we do it, thinking about how changing conditions are affecting our customers in a way that's difficult to get outside of sales.
Yeah. So you like the variety, the challenge of it?
Yeah, and it gets us into rooms that we otherwise um, wouldn't deserve, I guess, in quotes, to belong in, right? I think that if we continually get better and continue to think about how we can deliver value to clients and to customers, because we have to in sales, we end up getting into rooms that kind of make your eyebrows raise a little bit, right? So I think that that's really a cool part of it.
Yeah. And how'd you become good at it? Well, what was the process and the journey like?
I think you have to be set up for success at least once to know what that's like, right? And if you experience some success and are able to find mentors that see something in you and invest in you and can coach you, which I've been very lucky to have along the way, um, I think that that's a key. Um, I've always been somebody that loves the scoreboard. So as a young seller in my early and mid 20s, it was something that, when I stopped being an athlete, I thought was over, and now I would have to toil and do work like everybody else. Um, but there's no faking it at the end of the day or the week or the month or the quarter or the year, right? You know exactly where you stand. And I think that just being focused on that, I think that creates a level of focus that pulls you into work in a way that is very difficult to simulate otherwise.
Yeah.
So I got good at it by trying hard, caring a lot, and having good mentors.
And the drive was being number one, or was the drive income, or was the drive just simply being better than yesterday? Or
Yeah, all of the above, all of the above. I noticed that there was a path uh, in software sales. I noticed this early to change my life and my children's lives in a way that's very difficult to do outside of professional sales. So I got that. I think I'm thankful that that clicked for me at an early age. I wasn't just thinking about clocking in and clocking out. And I've noticed that about people that have whose careers have really taken off. And there are, of course, years where everything is kind of lined up and you have a great W-2, and those are fun years. But I think that there's a vision that is required. So I really noticed that this job has a chance to change lives in a way that very little else does. And um, in order to do that, it requires that we are constantly at work on ourselves and what we're doing, and we're constantly iterating, because in the space of software that I'm in, the world is very different um, month to month. I think we saw that even since COVID. During COVID, I was selling travel and expense software, and business travel stopped. So it was stressful at the time for everyone. But I think when I'm get to a place where I'm looking at retiring and I look at that place in my career, I'll recognize that the evolution that I was forced to go through because of our chosen profession of sales uh, advanced my caliber of work at a rate that's quicker than it would have been otherwise, because of all of those things.
yeah.
Changing what's possible for my life, changing what's possible for the people around me. Um, so yeah, being number one is great, especially when you're number four and then number three and then number one. But I think when you stack good years on good years on good years on good years is what was really the big motivator for me.
And how did you do that? Because having a great year can be
Happens.
luck, timing,
Right, right.
but
Um,
having
yeah,
multiple great years is a whole nother thing.
yeah, I think that, and this is like a Clint Eastwood sitting on his porch, like sipping his coffee, grunting at the kids, like moment. But
Get
I
off
think
my
that it
lawn.
takes, right, exactly. I think that it takes the best careers that I observe people have had great balance between patience and understanding when to make a move. And I think more than anything, I'm a pretty good seller. Um, I've I've cultivated a great network, which I'm very thankful for, but I've made good decisions about when to stay and when to go. And I think that in general, my generation is too impatient with when they deserve something else. And it's not that folks that have made good, patient decisions haven't felt frustrated at times, right? Well, look at me, I just had a 150% year, or whatever, or I wasn't set up for my territory got smaller. I think that there requires sort of a medium horizon vision. So I think that the right amount of patience is really key to that question you're answering.
And what did you learn from your mentors?
A couple of things. One, I think early in my career, literally what to and what not to say. I think when we're when we're very new in our career, we really need that, right? Like never say this, always say this. Um, I also learned that it's more about the customer than it is about us.
Oh,
I have kids who are in school now, and I work with my daughter who's learning new math, and she's it's maybe oversimplified to say growth mindset versus fixed mindset, but just thinking, oh, I'm not smart, or I'm not good enough because I don't get this, but understanding that the real smart, the real competence is the ability to learn new stuff. So early in my career, it was like, oh, my number isn't where I want it to be this month. But the real value is, well, what are you going to do about it then? And understanding that in deals, as I got further into my career, it's less about my competence as a salesperson and more about the customer. And my competence as a salesperson has more to do with getting into conversations with customers, the right ones, right? So making it more about them being the customer, the client, or the prospect, and less about me is something that I learned from my mentors, especially the informal ones, right? The non, like, this is your onboarding person, or this
Yeah,
is who
it's not.
we're aligning to as senior leader. Those are the things, because you look and find people that you really trust, either the way that they sell or the way that they built their career, and what to say, what not to say early in my career, and making it about the customer and therefore value and all those things later in my career um, have been the things that my mentors have given to me that I continue to try to pass along.
And what do you see yourself doing better than your competition, either externally or internally?
I think the career building piece is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that having the right amount of medium and long-term vision, and I think that being obsessed with how to be better next month, next quarter than I am now, I think pulls us back from the deals that we might be in right now and just trying to figure out how to get this one over the line, but really trying to harvest the lessons either from different phases of a career or the deals that we're in or the things that we learned from our customers and apply them going forward. That has been a strength of mine. And the other thing, especially as a people leader, I think that it's more clear to me now than ever, you're nothing without great AEs. And I've been very fortunate to be able to recruit and develop and promote really talented AEs. And that covers up a lot of the flaws that I may have as a leader. Um, and that's super important, and um, that I think that regardless of the little ins and outs that our industry sees, you know, um, companies that grow fast and fail quietly, I think talent and surrounding yourself with talent is always important. And something that I'm not afraid to do as a leader is have people that report to me that are really, really good, be smarter than me, might be able to outsell me, but there's something that I can deliver to them. And I think that sometimes that holds other first and even second line leaders back is they're scared of having folks that report into them that are really, really competent. So I think it takes a level of humility and security to be able to really build a team that wants to be around you. And that's something for all my flaws, I think I do pretty well.
And what do you think is the difference between like the A players and the B players?
I think that they're focused more on effectiveness than internal cosmetic KPIs. I I think that oftentimes when we're trying to coach what is usually a B or C player, we pull back to, okay, how much pipeline do you have? How much activity have you done? What does that activity look like? Right. And I think that as sales leaders, sometimes we like to do that because it's much more easy to measure those things
Yeah.
than effectiveness. And you have to be willing to really get into the conversations to audit the effectiveness of the message and really honestly backing out to why is it we're choosing to talk to this account? Why are we investing our time and thoughts as we're trying to fall asleep at night and creative energy into this particular person or this account? Let's really sell ourselves on that first, and then we'll have peace. So yeah, I think that effectiveness is the thing that makes the biggest difference, but it's the hardest to measure.
Well, when you start talking to somebody who gets it, it comes through pretty clearly, doesn't it?
It does. It does. And I think that it'd be great to be able to do that in an interview
Yeah.
all the time. And usually it's kind of like one of those things like I can't really explain it, but I know it when I hear it in an interview or um and oftentimes it can be really easy to revert for me to just a history of past performance and why is it that you were able to do that? And if they have a story around that, um, that gives me conviction that that is a repeatable trick.
Other than they just liked me or was my pure,
Yeah.
power of personality?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great topic, especially right now, right?
Sure.
I I feel like maybe during the post-COVID boom for a lot of companies, there was a lot of value on just being friendly with everyone and trying to be as in as many places as you possibly could because everybody was buying software.
Yeah.
And now there's a real difference, and you can tell the folks that are good at building rapport with the people that are good at building business rapport. If they can, I think what we're seeing right now is, and I'm not sure, you get a chance to talk to a lot of people doing a lot of different things, which is really cool. But I'd be curious your take too. But the people that can really deliver value to their customers, the people when their customers are having a hard time or they're struggling with something and they wonder, hey, what does XYZ think about this? Those are the people that can perform in all types of weather. And I think, especially what we've seen since, interest rates started going up, say mid 2021, those are the people that are really stretching out from the peloton.
Well, they have to either want to talk to you or have to. So it's easy to have them have to,
Right.
but it's up to them
Right.
to want
So,
to.
yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
I wonder what Doug thinks of this. He's a pretty
Right.
bright guy.
Right. Um, and I don't think it's not typically because Doug's a good looking guy or,
He
we
knows the
both like,
sports really
yeah,
well.
yeah, we both like Big Ten basketball. It's whenever I talk to Doug, I seem to learn something that I didn't before that makes me look good in front of my board or whatever. And so I think that, what that means for us is preparation is really important. Um, really understanding kind of what's next, what's around the corner for our customers. Those skills and that instinct, I would say instinct is maybe a good word for it. Just to know that you have to provide that value rather than just
Assume.
yes. And I think there was a lot of really good performance in the SaaS ecosystem that was sort of masked by what is a good skill of sort of serial availability. Like, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to always be available for my customers. So when they want to buy something, I can help them do that. To now, sort of the tide is out. Um, Maybe it's coming back a little bit, but when the tide is out, it's like, well, shoot, we're consolidating our vendors. Which of these vendors are making us smart because everybody's just a line item on a balance sheet now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard to define, but it's tremendously valuable.
Well, I think it's the difference between having a service mindset where you're reactive to what your clients and prospects want
Hmm.
versus a sales mindset
Yeah.
where you're in front of them,
Hmm.
kind of educating, persuading,
Hmm.
enlightening them to the possibilities.
Yes. Selling with insights has never been more important.
Yeah.
And here at Sprout Social, we've implemented Challenger since I've started at Sprout a year ago. And I think that that's so important that we're not just
Talking about the product.
exactly. And that's a unique challenge here at Sprout. G2 just named Sprout the number one software product. So we have to really think about the customer because our fallback is we have this beautiful product. So that's especially important for us in this current chapter of my career. Yeah, it's about outcomes and value and what is hanging out with this rep representing this vendor going to do for my career
Right.
or our business, especially when times are tough.
Yeah. And you're learning uh, process. What's that like? Because the best reps always have that.
Yes. Um, well, you mean other than listening to the podcast, you mean? No, but I mean, uh, I think that you have to be a voracious learner. I think you have to be obsessed with learning. And it takes a certain amount of humility to feel that that's really important. Um, I love to ask a question in interviews like, what's something that you taught yourself recently, or what did you read recently that made you adjust, maybe not necessarily change, but adjust how you do your work every day. So I like to surround myself with people that can give me a good podcast recommendation or let me know what they're reading. Not just to be a nerd, but to make sure that we're all doing what we can to be ahead of whatever's happening right now. So I think that I have a regular set of podcasts that I try to listen to. I try to read something new and I really like to try to listen to especially sales stuff that I don't necessarily 100% agree with.
That's good.
Uh,
Yeah, so do I. I
yes,
like that.
yeah,
It gets you
I-
riled up.
yes, and it tests your convictions. And it's like, well, do I believe this because I've always said that I believe this, and I'm defensive about X, Y, Z? Or is this going to be something that's more valuable in the second half of this decade than it was in the first half of this decade? So I think that that's really important. And I'm always looking for people that are of similar mind because none of us have all the answers. You know that you're in trouble when you talk to someone that thinks they've got it all figured out.
Well, that's kind of the B player trap is the know-it-alls, right?
Yeah.
They have a good run and they think
hmm
it's 100% about them.
hmm And they believe that what I've also noticed, and I've heard you talk about this, Brian, is they believe that everything that made them successful for whatever that run was is what's going to make them successful in the
Yeah,
future. And so having a critical mind to understand what were the circumstances that led them to that run. Um, was it a certain skill set or a certain thing that you were talking about that led to that? I mean, I think that it's important to make sure that you find yourself in similar situations in the future if you're unwilling to change. Um, but when you look to the future and if you're on top of things, then you're going to understand how either market conditions or trends or skills, how you're going to have to adapt to have your next run.
right. Because let's say you come from a big brand and now you go to a smaller brand, it's
hmm
different.
It's very different, isn't it? Um, I was just reading Frank Slootman's book, Amp It Up. Uh, he just left Snowflake, so of course he's been in the news, and he talks about that, that wanting culturally to hire leaders instead of followers, and how there are a lot of followers that are very competent and are at some sexy logos um, and row their wave, and they're good at doing big company stuff. But
Right.
it's very important to understand um, how if you're pre-IPO or if you're in more of a startup phase or you're over-indexing on growth rather than profitability, how what you're asking of your team is going to be different. And I've definitely seen people in my network that have gone from big logo companies to small companies, and they brought a whole mess of people with them. And it's not that they're bad people, it's just that it's
Different
different
problem.
skills. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's crashed and burned.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to realize that I think takes a degree of humility that's hard to find in really high performing people.
Well, it takes that curiosity that you're talking about that, you know,
That's
like
for it.
Michael Jordan went from basketball to baseball, right? It's a different game,
hmm
different movements,
Right, right.
different
Um,
tempo.
right. Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's important to know what sort of work you want to do and what's interesting to you, and knowing if you're going from one to the other, how you are going to have to adapt. So, when I have people reach out to me looking for career advice or things like that, I ask them to pull back and think about those things, and um, because there's a lot of gaps there that are difficult to project, right? Unless you have some experience there or you have somebody that can really paint a picture. When I see good people make career missteps, that's typically why.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a confidence paradox in sales where you need the
Yes.
confidence to like present in front of executives, but then you need kind of the paranoia to
Mhm.
analyze a deal.
Yes. Yes. Um, I've a phrase that gets thrown around a lot, I think, is the best salespeople are short-term pessimists and long-term optimists. And what that really means is, I think that if you have a good handle on if a deal or if a account relationship is going to go sideways, what is the most likely reason? If you have a good awareness for that, you're more likely to be able to do something about it,
Yes.
right? So, and I think that that's where the messaging sometimes falls flat on things like forecasting and opportunity rigor between leadership and frontline folks is, and there are definitely some poor leaders out there that want it because they want it. But I think when we have good conversations about, especially with high performers, like if you're a high performer, you should be able to forecast things very accurately
Yes.
because you understand the risk and you're paranoid about deals in a business healthy way so that you are in a position to do something about it before the deal's in shambles.
Right. Because
Right.
when you hear a rep, whether it's yours or someone else's at a QBR, being so optimistic,
Hmm.
having these big, huge round numbers, and of course it closes on the last day of the quarter's forecast, that you're like rolling your eyes, and the manager says, "Well, what are you concerned about?"
Hmm.
No, this thing's nailed. They love us.
Yeah. Is that there's a whole list of questions that makes me my stomach twist. And you know what? It's not because I'm smarter than the rep. It's just that I've made those mistakes already.
Right.
And yeah, I think that that's exactly right, Brian, because it shows an inability to understand where the risk is. Even if it's a great deal and the risk is only 10%, well, that's one out of every 10 deals that you're going to invest your time into that's going to go sideways.
Right.
Right. So understanding what that is and understanding what that is that might be unique to your company or unique to your customer is really important, especially if you've got not as tenured folks at your company. Um, so yeah, all of the above.
And what tipped you into leadership?
Fills my cup. The
Yeah.
people the people that know me best when I was a kid, they probably thought, oh, Doug will end up being a coach or a teacher. What they didn't know is that I also like income. So, so, um,
So he's going to take his time.
right, right. So, no, and I've always really gotten a lot of juice out of mentorship in general, and mostly because I've had such good mentors in my career. I know what that does,
Yeah.
and you know, um, I've been around long enough where I've been to weddings where people that I've worked with are getting married, or I attend the funeral of somebody that I worked with who's uh, a parent. And when I look back at my career, those relationships are really the currency that I have that I take away. And it's not that that's just pure. There's a level of competency that deepens those friendships, those relationships, um, that is really valuable to me. And I think that, especially in first line leadership, I try to strive to be somebody that folks who work for me say my career path and what is possible for me and my family really changed when I went to go work for Doug. If I keep that as my North Star, I think I'll be fine. But when I look back, maybe the last 5 years, I could tell you exactly where I finished, but it gets a little blurrier as I look further back into the past. But what I do remember and what's serving me value now are the real relationships that I built with partners, with colleagues, and a lot of customers as well that have made me smarter in my professional life. And those are people that I draw upon for career and life advice now. So um, that's really what fills my cup. And yeah, I just really enjoy being a leader. because I think that it allows me to still sell a little bit.
Yeah.
It allows me to have a bigger impact on the business, and it has a bigger impact on the humans that I'm working with.
And it sounds like you enjoy the intellectual challenge of the large complex sale.
Yes, I do. In my career, I've made a conscious choice to try to move up market because I feel like it's hard, and it's getting harder. And I think that I'm past the point in my career where I either want to be the one or commanding the one to make 100 dials a day. And I'm really interested in solving complex business problems. And I think it's important to kind of know yourself. And like, I don't have an MBA. I think we're a few decades away from being able to upload one into your brain. But I learn so much from my customers, and I learn a lot from the people that you have to sell with to do that effectively. So I love moving up market.
Cool. Hey, Doug, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
You can get me on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/Doug Vos. Always happy to connect for mentorship, for career advice, whatever. Appreciate your time, Brian.